So what I'm going to talk about is really how to transition from fear to faith. So in order to do that, maybe I'll just describe what happens in everybody's life when they are venturing or starting a new venture. No matter what, no matter how much you've studied, how much research you've done, how often you've Googled it, you're never going to know everything, because even if you got tons of information, if you've not gone through the experience, you'll lack the experience. You can have lots of knowledge, lots of information, but without the experience, you haven't got it. So because of the fact that your knowledge is limited, no matter how much you've done, some obviously more limited than others, there is a certain amount of fear and trepidation that comes as a consequence of that. So there's a lack of information, a certain amount of fear and trepidation, which of course breeds a lot of insecurities. That's how we start everything. That's how we start marriages. That's how we start businesses. That's how we start home education. That's how we start any new thing, a new job even. So then there is two approaches to this. We can say that if you're misinformed and you're fearful and insecure, that something has to be done here. So there are two approaches to that. The first approach would be that would be incorporated by the world or by somebody who's wanting to manipulate or take advantage of that situation. So what happens is that the misinformation, which we can call lies if you want, the misinformation, we perpetuate it. And then we offer the people a false sense of security. We offer them something in its place. So in other words, we actually feed the fear in order to perpetuate the insecurity, and then we can then offer false solutions or other things. So now that would be the world. I'll give you an example using education. We are home educating and we're concerned about what are the children going to do when they get old enough to go to college or some post-secondary institution of some kind. I've heard that you can't be successful here unless you've got credits and diploma and government transcript. Now that would be false information. That's not true. But because of that, and because of the fact that you've chosen to do an alternate route, there's a certain amount of fear and trepidation. Am I doing the right thing? And because of that, you're rather insecure. And because of that, there's a good chance that if you continue to believe the misinformation, that you will send the children back to school so they can get their credit diploma and so on. So that's what would normally, that'd be the normal case. So let's take now two approaches to that one. If I were, and again, I have to keep bringing this up because none of this makes sense unless you understand that the government pays more money for the delivery of their government programming than they do to give parents the right to do that. I hope everybody understands that. So as a home education provider, it is in my personal monetary best interest to frustrate your home education program so I can deliver government programs so I can make more money. So I hope everybody's understanding what I'm saying there. I want to continue on with this misinformation, fear, and insecurity. So now, if I am indeed far more interested in my well-being than your well-being, then I would say, oh, that's absolutely right. It's very difficult to get into post-secondary institutions without the credits and diploma. We know that. So what we've done there is we've perpetuated the lie, which of course feeds the fear. Then I say, but we can help you get your credits, and you could do this at home. You can still be, home educating, but we can help you with this credit. Okay. Now, a lot of people unfortunately do it. Another worldly idea is, the information is that your house could burn down and you could lose everything. So you're fearful. And when we turn around and says, but we will take care of that. We will sell you insurance. So if your house burns down, we will take care of that and give you a false sense of security, because anybody who's experienced anything with insurance companies knows that you're not going to replace what you've lost most of the time. All right. So that's the example. That's how the world treats it. We can use other information, the misinformation that we're being fed today on a certain topic that has got the entire world fearful. And now we can use that as an opportunity to make people do things they would normally never have done had they known the facts. So if everyone is clear on that. What is the Christian approach to this? It should be a whole lot different, because in all the examples that I give you on how to manipulate the misinformation, fear, insecurity, then it's always that the reason or the motivation is to help the individual control, excuse me, cash in, whatever. But it's manipulating other people for our own personal gain, one way or the other. And if that's if it's an individual, that's fine. If it's a company, obviously the company is looking for, well, it's not, I should go back. If it's an individual, it's still manipulation. If it's a company, bottom line is the bottom line. And if it's government that's doing that, then control is their bottom line. Okay. So having said all that, then you need to know that the Christian approach to this is very simple. We need to replace the misinformation with truth, with the facts. And the truth then sets us free from the fear. And so while we replace the misinformation or the lies with the truth, the fear gets changed to faith. And as a consequence, the people are secure and confident in the decision that they've made. So how that got anything to do with tonight's topic of transitioning from government to parents? Well, it's got everything to do with that. In that you need to ask yourself, why would the government be doing what it is doing? Actually, it's fair to ask, why is the company doing what it is doing? Or why is this individual doing what they're doing? And just today, I had a conversation with my son, and I said that it's far wiser to try and think about what would have made that individual say or do that, rather than to get angry at what was said and done. Because until we understand the motivation behind it, then we really don't truly, comprehend what has transpired as a consequence. So government then has laid a claim to having an authority in education. And they make that claim every day. And the entire system is based on the premise that the government thinks they have the authority and the responsibility, and therefore the control in education. Now, that, as you know, is well entrenched. It's been there for a very long time, and people don't even question it. We heard this today. We didn't see that many people, but I don't know how many people, everyone we heard today says, well, we've got to do this. This is what's now been mandated. And I simply said, says who? Or who was it that said this? And what that based on? And people look at you like, what? Yes, we can question this. So what we want to show this evening is that the government has created a system that is based on a premise that they have authority, they have control, they have responsibility in the education of the children. And we, when we home educate, have a tendency to bring that home. Not only do we not question anything that's being advanced by the government, but it is so entrenched, we don't even know oftentimes enough to question it. So what we want to show you this evening is how can you free yourself from the government and then become more in control as parents. Okay, I got a few extra people this evening. We've got Carrie and we got Nadia. Hi, Nadia. Nadia arrived late. And Dave. I'm going to ask Carrie and Dave if they have seen the Authority series that I put together pretty well a year ago now. Started last January, and it went on for several months. Did you get a chance to watch that video series? That's a no.
I haven't watched them all. No, I catch the odd one.
Okay. And Dave, did you get a chance to have a look at those?
No, I haven't watched it. No.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try and give a Reader's Digest condensed version of it. I'm just wondering if I should try and find some of the slides that we used there so we can explain that. So if you want to just give me a moment here, I'm going to get somebody else to speak for a few minutes while I try to find that. And then you'll see what it is. I think it's better to see a graphic image in terms of what we're going to be talking about, because it's kind of, what's the word for it? It's not concrete. It's rather abstract.
I would say if you are going to have your children at home to teach them, that you are going to focus on relationships with your children. Leave alone the fears that the government may impose on you. Leave alone the subject of money and funding, but concentrate on developing relationships with your children in your home. And that will go a long way in your home education.
What was the title of the series that you did? The videos?
It's called Authority. Yeah, Mike, do you want to direct the people here to find it?
It's easy to get to actually from our if you go to educationunlimited.ca, like our main page. If someone just wants to, like on the right side of the page is the Leo's Insights heading, and it has the three most recent Leo's Insights, but underneath that it says read more on Leo's Insights. So if you click that link, read more on Leo's Insights, then again on the right side there's what are called categories, and it's Authority is the number 5th one there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, just under categories. If you click on the link Authority there, that's the entire Authority series is there.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I still tell people about that. And that's on the Education Unlimited site, not Léo Gaumont. Okay.
Right, Education Unlimited, yeah.
Okay.
I think one of the things you'll get into is just kind of the area of the spheres of authority that some of your diagrams were doing in regards to that aspect of things. And I guess what I'm finding as I talk to individuals in regards to some of this is the sense of render unto Caesar what is Caesar's in regards to what that is. But it seems that so often in our society that we've come to think that everything belongs to Caesar in regards to what that is. And so we just kind of assume that the government has that authority, and that scripturally that the Bible says that we're supposed to obey Caesar in regards to what that is. But I think we could probably look at that in the sense of saying that really what Jesus was saying was only give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's in regards to what you're doing. And the other side of the coin is to give to God the things that are of God. And I think we've kind of reversed those things a little bit in regards to that. And we've kind of put everything into the government's sphere in regards to what that is. And we've kind of been taught to believe through school and upbringing that the government is the one that should be in control. And we need to reverse that and say, you know what, God is the one that is in control of everything. And he's only given a small piece to Caesar in regards to what that is. And that's our challenge, is to rethink what that small piece looks like in regards to our everyday lives. And I think it's a whole lot smaller than what we've been led to believe a lot of times, just in the training that we've got within our society in that sense. So that would be my sense, just kind of start there in regards to where that is. And then a lot of the other things kind of come into perspective.
Everybody
Yep.
see a couple of
I
sheep?
see sheep. I see sheep.
All right, well, I wonder why I picked on sheep. Anyways, so let's go on here, and we're going to talk about authority. And so this is basically, you'll see this presentation, but I think this is the part that that is really important. I've taken this entire thing, I've stretched it out. So many people wanted this from when I did it in AHIA. I believe that was in 2008, long time ago. I finally put it together last year, and I have to give kudos where kudos are coming, and that is Gary and Mike both worked very, very hard to help me put this thing together. So we talk about the ultimate source of all authority comes from God. We need to understand, take away God, there is no authority. Even the ones that aren't real authority. God is the ultimate and the source of all authority. So we start on that premise. Then we go along and we look in 1 Corinthians 15:24, where it says that when he, that is God the Father, abolishes all rule, all authority, and power. Now, the first, when I read that many, many times, but while I was studying on authority, I suddenly realized that if God abolished all rule, all authority, and all power, that he really would be abolishing himself. That's when I finally realized that the reason why I had so much trouble understanding authority is that, very much like Gary referred to with the government, you know, there's good things about the government, but there's also not such good things about the government. And this is, you know, what we need to understand. There's authority and there's rule and there's power, but that authority or that rule can be, you know, a jurisdiction or a kingdom. So that can be eliminated. All authority, well, how can you eliminate it yourself? So there must be a good authority and a bad authority. And then, of course, and power. So when I started studying this, I realized that the rule is a jurisdiction or a kingdom. The authority is the ability to exercise or distribute power. And of course, power is the ability to exercise the authority within a jurisdiction. So what we need to understand that in this context, that the power we talk about here is more a matter of restriction to a jurisdiction. In other words, the power is a restriction to stay in your own kingdom or jurisdiction. So you cannot have one without the others. You can't have rule without authority, without power, or power without authority, rule, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing you need to know also is all can be expressed legitimately or not. So in other words, there could be a rule and a false rule. There could be an authority and a false authority, a power and a false power. So rule or jurisdictions must have order, which is expressed by an authority with a chain of command. And boundaries are there to limit the power. So what we're going to do is just going to take a look at jurisdictions, and all of this stuff here is what I wanted to come to this so you can have a look at what it is that we're talking about. What we picked, a few jurisdictions, all right, or kingdoms. You'll notice that I picked government and church and family, and I added economy, labor, and community. There could be a few more, but that's what I picked for the sake of this presentation. So every jurisdiction has a rule, and we have an authority. So here God is, if you will, the boss or rules over the king, and the king then rules over his citizens. In the church, we have God who directs the leaders, and the leaders then serve the flock. Within economy, we have God, the steward, who directs the steward to take care of the stuff. In labor, we have God who directs the owners to, treat his workers fairly. And finally, in the community, we have God with the servants and the served. Now, you'll notice here that the first premise we made is that God is the source of all authority. So he is actually in authority here in every one of these jurisdictions, including the family. So God then is directing the man, who then directs the woman. Right, what happened there? I did a click and I'm not sure what happened. Okay, here's another click. Now, every one of these has boundaries. So there's a boundary here that keeps the family separate from the government, separate from the church, separate from the economy, from labor. Every one of these jurisdictions have it. So you can see here, we have a jurisdiction or rule, and we have an authority. In every case, the authority is God. And then we have the power that is distributed to the king, the leaders, the man, steward, owners, and servants. And now I'm trying to remember here what my question is, but I'm going to ask, what do you think is the most important jurisdiction to God? Where do you think God focuses his attention? I'm going to answer for you.
The family.
That's right. There it is. So it's the family that God is focused on. So therefore, if God is focused on the family, you say, I got to go. Another question is, and again, I haven't done this for a while, so I'm having to look at the slides. Yeah, right. So then where the question that I didn't ask is, where do you think God has given the authority for education? Well, the answer again is the family.
Yeah.
Right. Now it's very simple. This is common sense. This isn't even biblical. When I see churches give birth to children, or government give birth to children, or the economy or labor or community or anything else for that matter, then I might question this. But I don't think it's hard. It's a stretch for us to believe that the family that God is focused on, and the family that has the only jurisdiction that has the creative power to procreate, would obviously be given the authority for education. All right, now we got more. I guess the question is, what then is the role of the government and the church? I don't know where I'm going here. No, the question is, what authority then does the government have in education? Through God's eyes? None. How about the church? Does the church have any authority in education? Nope. They didn't create those kids. Neither do the other jurisdictions. That's what those axes are about. Now, I guess we can say, what are all those things there for? And I'm not sure if I'm going in the right direction here, but we'll see by the next slide. Sure enough, every one of those things are there to serve the family in some capacity. The government is there as an example to protect the family. The church is there to encourage and support the family, to give them spiritual direction. Every one of these other jurisdictions are to be focused on the family as well. Are we seeing sheep?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, good. So then we go back here. We're going to look at the family again. But here's the problem. You'll notice that when I described the family in the last series of slides, that I talked about God, man, and woman. Did anybody notice that there was no mention of children there? I hope so.
I did notice, yeah.
Yeah, so there's God, man, and woman. There's a problem with that. That doesn't constitute a family. So we're going to fix it. It turns out that we have man, the woman, and children. That constitutes a family. So where's God in all this? Well, pretty simple. He envelops the family. He surrounds the family. It's entirely different, the way he operates with the family than the way he operates with the government. With the government, as you remember, that God directs the leaders, and in the church it's God, so the king, and in the church it's God that directs the leaders, and so on. And here we have this thing, but there's this ability to procreate. The other jurisdictions don't have. So here we have that man and a woman and children constitutes a family, and God separates or envelops the entire family, surrounds the family, and that's why it is indeed his favorite institution. Now, what happens if man, or for that matter, we can ask this other question. When you take a look, if you remember government, we had the government. God directed the king, who directed his citizens. So that means, in a way, that God is the president, and the king is the vice president, and then the clients are the subjects. So what would happen if the king decided that he was tired of being the vice president and wanted instead to be the president? Do you think that would change the way government would work? Of course. What happens when the man decides that he is going to play the role of God rather than be subject to? Well, as soon as he does that, he eliminates the influence of God, because there's only room in this world for one God. It's either the God that we know, or somebody claims to be God in his place. If the husband does that, then things can go pretty haywire. And what happens now, you can see that the man has now extended his jurisdiction beyond that God has put in the first place. In other words, he's gone beyond his boundaries. And then, of course, we understand that what happens is that when man does that, the whole world turns upside down. You've heard of abusive husbands and abusive fathers and so on. That's all because that God factor has been usurped by the man. So the man now plays the role of God, but he doesn't have the foundation upon which to build. Okay, just very much the Reader's Digest condensed version. To see the full meal deal in a much more professional fashion, please go to the Authority series on the website. All right, so we see sheep again. We all there?
Yep.
Okay. Here is, I'm not quite sure where we're going to go with this, but we'll play the slides. So what happens if God is kicked out by the king? He becomes God in his place, and then things are subverted. What happens if that same thing happens in the church? We talked about this already. If the leaders now decide that they're not going to follow God, but they're going to decide what should be done, then you have a subversion again of the chain of command. So now the king is playing the role of God, and now the leaders of the church are playing the role of God. We already talked about man doing that. So what happens is that once this takes place, then there is a breaching of the boundaries. So you can see here what happened is that the government greatly enlarged its boundaries to encompass that of the family. And the church has done the same thing. Not quite entirely here, but still enough for you to see that the church itself has encroached in a jurisdiction that is not their own. Now, I need to quickly say that I'm using ifs here. If the leaders are not tuned in to what God wants, then there is an encroachment. Let me give you an example, and I hope that this isn't offensive. But if the leaders have believed the government's false claim to having authority in education, then out of that, you will get something that I like to use as an oxymoron. You have the creation of a Christian school. So the church is honoring the government's, validating the government's claim to having authority in education. And then, and you've heard this before, there are churches that actually discourage families from home educating. So that is a breach of boundary. We already established clearly that education is within the realm of the family. It does not belong to the government or to the church. And as a consequence, everything gets thrown on its head. God gets fired out. The first thing government does when it wants to be totalitarian is get rid of things. Matter of fact, do you know what 3 things have to be removed for totalitarian government to take place? They include faith, they include family, and they include freedom. Take those 3 things away, and you've got totalitarian government or communism, if you will. So let's see what happens here. Things go haywire. I hit the wrong button. We went backwards. What happens? The whole family gets turned upside down, inside out. You've already heard that the man now is the dumbest thing that's ever been created. Children know more about climate change than man does, than the woman does, and so on and so forth. The whole order is perverted and things go south, go crazy. And what happens, you have the breakup of the family, the new family. The children are separated from the family. The woman is separated from the family. The man is separated from the family as well. This is the problem that we at Education Limited try to encourage, to fix. So as a consequence, all of a sudden, we are now there to obey the government and to serve the church. And we find ourselves in, being tempted with fear and doubt and guilt. We're being intimidated. We're being manipulated into doing what I believe was never God's intention in the first place. You remember the first slide where we had put the family, and even though it was a bit warped in that we had God, man, woman, it's still the family. It's God's focus, and it is where the authority for education has been given. So therefore, the government and the church, those arrows should be the other way around. We saw that. They should be there to help and to encourage the family, not the other way around. So what happens is that you get more confusion, and you get more coercion, and you get more control. And it's really ends up being lost freedom. I'm not sure how close we are to that today. I think we're not too far away. What's going to happen to all this in the end? Well, we know what's going to happen to it in the end. I did that as a real quick thing. I want to encourage you to go and take a look at the Authority series. It lasted, I think, all of January, February, March, April. I think we were into May. Am I right, Mike? Before we ran out of gas there?
I saw 18 of them. Is that the right one? 18 of them?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Start with number 1 and work your way through.
Okay.
That's the essence of what we wanted to talk about tonight. And that is, if we know who we are, if we know the authority that we have, if we know that with that authority comes a responsibility, then there will be a transition from looking to government for our directives, and we'll stick to education because that's our our forte. But if we are looking to the government for that direction in education, we cannot please God doing that. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying those who go to school are sinning and going to forever, pay for that in some kind of eternal fire. Not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the government does not have the family's best interest at heart. It's got the government's best interest at heart. And I'll say this, and I don't mean to be offensive, but the church gives a lot of lip service about family. But when was the last time you heard really, really good teaching coming from the pulpit about what it means to be or a father or a wife and a mother, what it means to be children, what is the chain of command, what is the rule, where are the boundaries? Have you ever heard that coming from the pulpit? Probably not. So there's a reason for that. And the reason is very simple, is that if we truly know our authority, then everyone else needs to line up to us. I'm going to give you the summary, or if you will, the conclusion to what I learned in authority. This is an opinion, and I would welcome someone to question me or to challenge me on this, because I don't want to be wrong. But I am of the opinion that the Father has the greatest authority on earth. Not only did God give the Father his authority, that the Father literally is God's representative here on earth, but he also gave him his name. When we refer to God, we refer to God as God the Father. And I've tested that in French as Le Père, and in every other language, I've tested this. And we always refer to God as the Father. I'm not sure if that's a coincidence or an accident, but I am of the opinion that the man of the house, the father, if indeed he acknowledges the God that's surrounding his family and takes his directive from God, if we can get the dad to go there and to focus on God rather than government, us facilitators are on easy street. We're on cruise control, because now if the father is doing that, he'll be loving his wife, and he's going to be encouraging and helping his wife, and they're going to be doing everything they can to cultivate all the wonderful things that God has put into those children. They will stop trying to make those children fit a box created by government that has never given birth to children. They will stop trying to make them be good at everything, like the government, who doesn't know the children. So they try to make them all into journalists and scientists and mathematicians and et cetera, et cetera. They will stop grading the kids. They will allow them to be comfortable with who they are. In other words, they will come to the conclusion that, unlike the government that intends to make something of these children, the parents will understand that they're already fully created. All the gifts are there, all the talents are there, all the shortcomings are there, all the flaws are there too, and we help them to soar with their strengths and to manage their weaknesses. We allow them to be comfortable in their skin. And we, as the parents, who are the only ones who have access to their hearts, God and the parents, in other words, only the creators have access to the children's hearts. Government and the outside world and everyone else, they have access to the heads, but not the hearts. And that's the same thing can be said for the enemy of our soul. It's the enemy of our soul, not the enemy of our hearts. Okay? Now that can go down. So I'm saying this because we as parents then have the privilege of writing the truth in on the hearts of the children each and every day. So when they grow up, And I have to say that I do bring this up a lot, even with my own children, and they're all grown up. I can say, hey, I know what I wrote in your heart. Okay? And so that's the advantage. We want to transition from having a government that is completely detached from our family. Let me give you a little quick story. When we started home educating about 35 years ago, well, a little over 30 years ago, I guess you can say, I got a call from the chairman of the board. Now, I was a teacher in that school board, and he was really quite perplexed why I would take my children out of the school or the system in which I had worked. But the same year that I had decided to home educate my children was the year I quit that board and went to another board. So he phoned me and he asked me, he said, what are you doing? I said, well, we're training them at home. And he said, wait a minute. No, he says, we've got the system, and the system is there. It offers the best there is. And I said, so are you claiming that the school system can do a better job of teaching my children than I can? He said, yes, absolutely. May I ask you a question? Certainly. I said, can you tell me what my children's names are? He couldn't answer. I hope I've made my point. I know my children. I was there when they were born. You were too, especially you moms. Okay. We know them. We know them inside out. Government can't. I stopped for a moment because my internet was unstable. All right. So they specialize in conformity. Everybody has to believe the same thing, do the same thing, behave the same way. Are we seeing any indication of the success of that system today? Really? We specialize in God's diversity. Every one of these children are unique, and we do everything we can to develop, provide opportunity for God and for others and for life and for experience to develop what they are. That's why our children are so successful at post-secondary. They don't go to find themselves because they're not lost. They are lost in school. They are, but they're not at home. Transitioning from government to parents is really transitioning from fear. Think about it. How are they going to do post-secondary? How are we going to prepare them for their lives? How are they going to do this? How are we going to do that? How are we going to deal with the bullying? How are we going to do all the schoolwork at home now? Blah, blah, blah. Fear, 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 fear. And we bring it home. We give it to God. And we relax in faith. Because now we're operating in truth, not a false claim. And the truth sets us free. So to transition from government to parents it's not a click, I have to admit. It's a process, just like transitioning from school to unschooling. It's the same process. We have to start understanding the role and the place of government, and just as importantly, where the government really doesn't have a place or a role. And so we need to start asking whether or not the claims being made are legitimate claims or illegitimate claims. I do not believe personally that government has authority or responsibility or control in education of the children if the parents are doing their part. Did you hear the if? Because sometimes we do know of situations, and I'm sure we all do, that sometimes the school is indeed the best place because the family is dysfunctional. If the father does not acknowledge God and is not accepting his directives from God, and he becomes a God unto himself, well, that can be a bad scene. And sometimes it's not even a power trip. Sometimes it's the failure to acknowledge. I will end by saying, let me tell you what our job description as facilitators with Education Unlimited we're different from the rest in this way. We believe that if we can get the parents to understand the authority that the father has in God and his responsibility towards his wife and children, we're on cruise control. Everything is going to work fine. Now, there's one other factor here that we need to bring up. If the father now realizes that he has this authority and corresponding responsibility, but his wife does not acknowledge that, and that the word for that, incidentally, is the word submission, which is a beautiful thing, because a father who is now pretending he is God the woman cannot submit to that. She can only be subjected to that because he is making her subject to him. That's what happens in a perversion. So two different words, and the world likes to say that they're the same. They're not. Submission is a beautiful thing. It involves love. It involves service. Okay? And of course, it involves a good example for the children to follow. Subjugation, on the other hand, is top-down, authoritarian, and it doesn't really do a whole lot. Now, is government asking us to submit, or is government asking us to subject ourselves? As a matter of fact, what are we called? We're called subjects, because we are subjected to them and their false claim to authority. Now, I'm not trying to start a war here. I'm just saying, know who you are. Government's got its place, but there's an awful lot of stuff coming down the plank in education and a whole lot more. I'm sure I don't have to address some of the recent issues that are taking place. There's a lot of top-down authoritarian, you do this or else kind of subjugation that we are being put under, and education isn't a whole lot different. So how are we doing in terms of unschooling, in terms of Education Unlimited? Well, we actually are playing a bit of a game. You folks are indeed registering your children through our school with the government. That is how the system works. So we are playing as much freedom as we can within that system. Now, you know that there was a notification. The only thing that came through, that provides a parent the opportunity to register directly with the government. And now it's the government that is directing their education. That was not an improvement. Registering, and I'm going to say through us, I know it's not the same with some of the other boards, and maybe most of the other boards, but registering through us is you have a friendly facilitator who understands this authority. So they will protect you from the school protects you from the board, and the board protects you from the government. So there's layers of protection there. Technically speaking, we are still validating the government's claim to authority, but all we're doing is we're simply saying, fine, there you go. Good. Children are there, they're registered, now back off, we'll take it from here. And so it's the closest thing to freedom that there is. The only other way to get freer is to disconnect completely from the government, which I should point out is easier done in the beginning than to try to do that halfway through. So you'll notice that the notification only was offered, but it really wasn't a freeing of the parents, and it was not an acknowledgement of parental authority as much as it was an acknowledgement of government authority, and that we are seeking the government's permission to do what God has called parents to do. So I hope I was able to somehow help you understand the importance of knowing the place of government. We're not going to torpedo the government. We're not going to torpedo the church. But what we want to do is we want to understand that we are the ones who are in authority, particularly when it comes to the family, as we are the ones who are responsible for creating those children or adopting them, same thing. And it is us that then should be educating them The government has no claim here, neither does the church. They both have their places, but their places is not in the family home. Okay, I hope that was instructive or helpful. So we've only got 2 people who are not part of our agency. Well, if any of you want to ask questions, both Carrie or Dave, for that matter, Gary or Mike or Nadia want to ask question, or Sharon, you can certainly do that. Does anybody have any questions to ask at this point in time or comments? Carrie, you're on mute.
Well, that was a really good reminder and refreshing of all those things. Yep. Thank you. You have a question?
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Was that recorded where I could listen to that again?
Yes. First of all, I'm really going to encourage you to go through the actual authority series. That,
Yep,
you
on
know,
the website.
most of what I said is in there, but I've stretched it out. There's a lot more information because I did give you a condensed version this evening. That'd be the first thing. And then the second thing is that this particular evening has been recorded, and between my friend Mike and my friend Gary, they will have that, you know, they'll take out all the nose scratching and all the things that don't belong and all the beginning stuff, and then it will be put on the website. They've been pretty fast, probably by week's end, beginning of next week. Right, Mike? Right, Gary?
Yeah, it's usually most of the time it's by the end of the week.
Okay. So it all depends on how many glitches have to be cleaned out. But yes, this particular thing will be put on the
It'll go back on the website.
yeah, help me. What
Simon,
happened?
It goes on YouTube, on our Education Unlimited YouTube channel.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the place to go, the Education Unlimited YouTube channel. And of course, we strongly encourage you to subscribe to that. And I think through the website, you can be reminded every Monday that there's a new one up. We put up a new blog every Monday, except for next Monday and the Monday after, and maybe the Monday after. We'll take a bit of a break during Christmas season here, and then we'll start again in January. Okay. Dave, do you have any questions or comments?
Not really. I got some people attending as well, you see.
Okay.
So
Yes.
it's my first time joining this meeting. I've got the email a couple of times to connect to this, and this was the first time that actually worked out for me to connect, and I was 10 minutes late. Sorry about that, but so very informal. Thank you very much for presenting it like this, and I'm glad I joined, and I wish some more times are going to be available for me to connect when you have a meeting like this. So
Okay.
I just noticed that some other people that that I know that are not that are connected with you on the Education Unlimited that didn't get the invite. And I did notice in the email it said it was open for all. So maybe
Yes.
we can grow the popularity on the connection here.
That'd be very good. If you're interested, this was the third of 3. We did, it was called transitions or transitioning. We transitioned from unschooling to post-secondary on the first one, and that's on the YouTube channel. The second one, we transitioned from school to unschooling. That's on the YouTube channel. And this one here, transitioning from government to parents, that'll be up on the YouTube channel probably by week's end, I would think. Good. All right. Any other comment? Sharon, Nadia, Gary, Michael? Boy, I was running on reserve tonight, so I hope I did a good job. All right. So God bless you all. Thank you for joining. And I know we do say it's supposed to be about an hour and a half or so, but I forewarned there wasn't going to be a lot of people here tonight. Too close to Christmas, I think. And we have, if you will, I think we have an institutional bad luck on the last one. Generally speaking, we're outnumbered. Staff outnumbers parents usually on these last ones for some reason. So, all right. Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. God bless you all, and we will look forward to seeing you next time. We're not sure what is up. Nadia is going to be working on another series pretty soon here and letting us know. So in the meantime, have a very Merry Christmas. Enjoy the break. Tomorrow is our last day if you didn't read the email, and we'll see you in January whenever that opens. God bless and good night.
Sure.